Well, hey everyone, this is your host, Gentry, and welcome to the Vibrant Life Show. This show is all about exploring the purposes God has placed in our lives and the passions He's placed in our hearts to reach the communities He's placed us in for such a time as this. So whether we're hearing stories of those living out their purposes, helping you discover your passion, asking hard questions, or leaning into cultural moments, the goal of this show is to remind us that the life we're created to live is an adventurous one, a meaningful one, a purposeful one. We are invited to live the vibrant life. Well, on this show today, we are actually jumping off of last week's. This will be our part 2 of love languages. So if you have not heard that yet, you can check it out on our podcast, on YouTube, anywhere that you listen. I would highly recommend it, as we really laid the groundwork for what are love languages and why is it helpful. I don't think it's necessary, as I think sometimes when we take personality tests, and if you know me, I love these things. I love personality tests. I love Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, spiritual gifts, love languages, learning styles. I really believe, and I get to coach people through this, how they are, as my dad says, built to run. And this is a unique just a fingerprint of God in our lives, because if we are created in His image, He's made all of us unique. He's made all of us on purpose and for such a time as this. And with the family we were born into and the family we maybe have one day, these are just tools that we can better love those around us, as it says, to love your neighbor as yourself. So this is just a way with our love languages. These are ways that we express love and ways that we receive love. And I also want to say that sometimes people say, well, I love to give gifts, but I don't love necessarily to receive gifts. Because honestly, sometimes people are like, oh, I love gifts. It just sounds like give me gifts, which I'm not opposed to. However, it doesn't, I think that some people just need to admit, I love it when people are out there shopping and they see something, they think of me and they want to give it to me. I think that because then you feel seen, you feel known, because they listened to something one time you said and thought, hey, I want to gift this to someone. And so I also want to say that sometimes if you're not really a person who likes to receive in that same way, then maybe that's not your top love language. And this is by Gary Chapman. If you heard the last episode, I really nailed it this time. And so there's a test you can actually take called the 5 Love Languages, and it's the number 5 lovelanguages.com. And if you're listening later and you want to pause, go take it and come back. It might be helpful to kind of know where you are as I'm listening to this. Or what I always love to do is listen through things and then kind of find yourself in them, and then go take the test to see if it kind of confirms what you've already picked up on. So the 5 love languages that we're talking about is words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, giving gifts, and physical touch. So words of affirmation, which is using words to affirm the other person, we talked about last week, along with quality time, giving this person your undivided attention. This is my top, as we talked about this one, and physical touch, which we'll get to today. And it's how important it is to really know your language and know how the people around you in your life receive the same thing. And have you ever been to a country where you just barely knew how to get by? You're trying to read. Okay, I've been in Russia, and trying to read signs in Russia, there's no, unless you know the symbols already. I mean, you can kind of go as someone who speaks English, you can kind of go to Spain, you can go to Italy and kind of pick up on what they're saying because of the Latin. You can kind of pick up on some of the words, but there are some times where you just have zero clue. And I remember one time, I don't know if you've ever taken a different language growing up. I'm here in Arizona. We took Spanish. And then I went to college and I just decided I'm going to take Italian. Online, y'all. Online. Don't take a foreign language online. You're never gonna succeed. That was rude. You might actually be smarter than me. That's actually probably the facts. And that was my first D I've ever gotten in my life at ASU. Forks up. I was in Italian. And so then I go over to Italy and I think, ooh, I took Italian, I took Spanish, I'll be fine. And I didn't understand anything happening. But I remember one time my friend met this guy and he was Italian and he could speak Italian but understand English. And then all of a sudden, it was so strange. I could start to hear what he was saying based off just a few words that he was picking up on. And then I could interpret what he was kind of hopefully saying to my friend. And then she could speak back to him in English. And so I was the epic third wheel interpreter, honestly. It was just a beautiful love story. But it was just interesting how you go other places and you can pick up on just a little bit enough to where you can really help and you can navigate, you can pick up on their language. And I think sometimes even when it's not our own language, when you start to look at the people around you, you can say, oh, this might be their language. I can speak that. It might not be my main one, but I can actually meet them in that space. I can interpret it a little enough to where it can get by. And so that's why I love these languages. It helps our relationships. Even in the smallest amount of knowledge, we can begin to learn our language and also the language of people around us. So what I want to dive into now, again, we've done words of affirmation, we've done quality time, and so the next one is acts of service. This is doing something for the other person. Doing something for the other person. Have you ever heard that saying, actions speak louder than words? I know that this was created by somebody whose love language was acts of service. Like, no doubt in my mind. Because literally actions do speak louder than words. Now, they might have a second that is words of affirmation, so maybe it's right there, but doing something for someone. So you can love by doing things as in washing the dishes, cleaning floors. You can volunteer group. If you need something, they know and they do it. And they actually enjoy doing these things for them. Within my mom is acts of service. And I mentioned that on the last show. Shout out to Jan. She doesn't always get all the shout outs, but she's epic. And she is acts of service. So I remember growing up how much, and I'm kind of a very clean person, but acts of service is not mine. And so I always knew that if after my parents went to sleep, I used to stay up and I used to clean the house. And all of y'all are thinking, I want a child like that. You do until they turn 21 and they become a disaster, as I did, okay? So I'm not totally patting myself on the back here, but I would stay up and literally clean the whole house while my mom was asleep because I loved the fact that she could wake up in the morning and feel loved in that way because I cleaned the house for her and I did something that she didn't have to do. And it was something she would normally have to do, and I took that off her plate. So that's an example of acts of service. And you can do this single, you can do this in community, you can do this in relationships, but you really need to know what someone else needs to actually beat them to the punch sometimes. And so a lot of times people who are acts of service are very justice driven. I've found they're very much activists because, like I said, like actions speak louder than words. They like want to do something about it. And I'm not saying that that's across the board. I've just found that a lot of times people who are more activists are also acts of service because they are action oriented. They see something, they feel something, and now they're going to go do something about it for someone else. And so that is just an idea of maybe hospitalities. A lot of people who have the gift, there's actually spiritual gifts that maybe we'll get into one day. But the spiritual gift, there's hospitality. This is an act of service. I got to go to South Africa for about 6 weeks, about 10 years ago. And I just love my SA fam. And they are people that are hospitable. Have you ever been to other countries, not America, where you just walk in and they're just your auto family, like automatically family? They just love you. You're a part of it. They want you to sit down. They want you to sit at the table. They have food for you. And I remember every time I would go to get dinner, I had to leave a little bit in my bowl because it was actually winter time. It was summer here, winter there. And we had like soup every night because it was freezing and we didn't have central heating. And so we would have soup. And if I finished it full, they would put all of it like back because their whole culture is acts of service. Their culture is hospitality. They don't want you to feel like you need to ask for more food. They want to beat you to the punch. They want to make sure that they are serving you. And I think that it's beautiful that within these things, you can actually find certain cultures who are more apt to I don't know, present it in this way. And so I love that. And what we've been doing, even on the last show, is in each love language, we're also talking about where it can be found in Scripture, and then how God loves us and how we can love Him and those around us. So one of the scriptures that I find, and we kind of mentioned it last time when we were talking about quality time, is Mary and Martha, because Mary is absolutely quality time. She wants to sit at the feet of Jesus. She just wants to take it all in. Now, Martha is acts of service. That girl, she is like, I'm doing things. I want to do things. I want to serve people. I want to host people at my home. And the thing that she did here is actually in John 12. I'm going to skip over the last one where Jesus is like, okay, Mary's doing the right thing. Because Martha actually, if you read the story later on in John 12, it actually talks about 6 days before Passover, Jesus comes back to Bethany, and Jesus had just raised Lazarus, their brother, from the dead. And so they're at their house. And so it reads this. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha was serving them, and Lazarus was one of those reclining at the table with him. And then Mary took a pound of perfume and pure expensive nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped it with her hair. So the house was filled with the fragrance of perfume. And so Martha is now found serving, not complaining, but serving in her way of love, showing love, and also, I believe, her gift of service, of hospitality. And she's not complaining. She's loving on people. And there's something that happens when you get to love on people in your purest love language that just really brings joy to our spirit. And I also believe that Jesus displayed this as he washed his disciples' feet in the upper room. It was an act of service. It was an act of humbling himself and saying, I can do whatever I need to do. I'm not too big. I don't need to be like just, I can actually serve you by washing your feet. I don't need just my feet washed. And I believe that Jesus put on the display of this humbling spirit of those who have the love language of act of service, because it almost feels like nothing is too beneath them when we do it in the way of Jesus. And we can do this by serving on volunteer teams. And I really believe that if you are at a local church, which I highly recommend, it's always beautiful to be under the leadership of others. And I know it's actually biblical as well, but find a place to serve. If you're missing that space, I really believe we're all called to show love in all of these ways, and find a place to serve. And maybe it'll take a couple of times to find the right place to serve where it really feels like it hits your niche. But at the same time, I really believe that serving others and loving others is just a beautiful way to represent God in this world by putting others first and serving them in that way. And if you're joining us here on the Vibrant Life Show, I am talking about the love languages, the 5 love languages. And we are going through all of them. We've gone through the first 3, words of affirmation, quality time, and acts of service. So we're going to hit the last 2 here in the last little bit. And the next one that we are going to talk about is giving gifts. Giving the person a gift is an expression of thoughtfulness. So this is something that they studied, that these around the world, this one is the most prominent universally in cultures. Giving gifts is like the most prominent gift. The prominent love languages, because how I was talking about how certain cultures display certain love languages more prominently. This one is the most prominent in most cultures, where you show up and they have something for you. You leave and they have something for you. And I don't know if you've experienced that in other ways, but have you heard that saying, it's the thought that counts? I, again, believe it might just be someone who receives gifts that way. It's like, it's the thought that counts. Because sometimes it's like, have you ever had a child give you just the craziest drawing ever, and you're wondering how long you have to keep it on your refrigerator? But, it blesses you too, because they thought of you. And it's like, okay. But they're like, it's the thought that counts, that you thought of me when you weren't with me. And you're like, I'm going to spend money, or I'm going to spend my time to create this, to buy this, to gift this to someone else. It's the thought that counts, that you thought of me when you weren't with me. And I think that's what actually matters so deeply to many people. And like I said at the beginning, many people I've talked to get weird, who I know their love language is gift giving. And they're like, oh, I love to give it, but I don't necessarily need them. And because it can sound materialistic and that they just want things. And that's not the case. They just want to know that they were thought of so much for you to like do something for them. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. This is my lowest. Again, words of affirmation and gift giving is my lowest. And so I have people on my Arise team who are gift givers, and I love it. So there's times where I need to go and give them a gift and be like, I really thought of you in this, and just ask the Lord to help me meet them in their love language, because it's not natural for me. So I'm sorry to everyone who's out there that's like, Allie's never given me a gift. I'm so sorry. I'm going to try harder. I'll try harder. But one thing I realized actually is my brother is gifts, and I didn't actually realize this. He's 26, and I didn't realize this till his last Christmas or his last birthday, because I didn't have enough time to give him a gift, and he's so good at giving gifts, so good and thoughtful at giving gifts. I'm like, how in the world? And I remember actually at Christmas, he gave me a gift, and he actually just got married, but they were engaged at the time. And I was like, oh, did Summer, your wife, Summer get this and you just gave it to me? He was so offended. He's like, I found that for you. And I was like, oh, sorry. Great job. It was an awesome, epic, he thought of me and he knew me. And then come his birthday 2 months later, I got him a gray polo shirt for golf. And he's like, thanks, And I don't think he realized it. But then my sisters gave him this cool Cardinals thing, and he's a baseball Cardinals fan. And he just lit up. And I realized in that moment, my brother is gifts. That's his love language. I don't know. As someone who studied this so much, I never actually realized it. So now when it's gifting him something, I really take the time to find something that's meaningful. Now, my older sister, Sydney, I could probably just give her a gift card because that's not her number one, and she's fantastic with a gift card. But with my brother, I really have to take time to do that. So just so you know, that's maybe an example of a way to love someone around you that is gifts. Or to, if that's you, to maybe explain that to someone else around you so that they can really meet you in that space. One of the ways that I've seen this in scripture is the widow's offering in Luke 21. So she brings just these 2 small copper coins, and she's this poor widow, and that's all that she has, but she gives it. And this is a gift to Jesus. Yet these Pharisees are in there and trying to show off how much money they had and they were giving. And he's like, no. He said, he says, truly I tell you, Jesus says this. He says, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. All these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. And so some people give gifts just because they have the money, and it's not necessarily the thoughtfulness, or even when we do it for Jesus, it's just oh yeah, I have all this stuff, and which is actually still good. It's the heart posture. So don't get me wrong on that. But the thing is that she wanted to give what she had because she was thinking of Jesus. She loved him, and she wanted to put this in the temple treasury. And I just love how she just put everything she had because it was the gift that she wanted to give, and it mattered that much. Another example is Lydia in Acts 16. She is the generous woman in Philippi. And so if you want to go read that, she's another example. And what I think is actually kind of cool how we're going to gift these things back to Jesus is in scripture, it talks about all these different crowns that we'll receive in heaven. But at the end of it, it says we're actually going to lay all of our crowns back at his feet. So we're going to gift him back these crowns at his feet. And I just love that idea that we can we give back to our communities. We can give back to God in so many different ways. So that is the love language of giving gifts. So this is giving the person a gift as an expression of thoughtfulness. The last, and certainly not least, this is my number one, physical touch. Number one for me, but it's feeling close to somebody by contact or just physical closeness. So this is my favorite, but it can also make people feel unbelievably uncomfortable. So I have to, and then COVID happened, which was just the saddest thing that ever happened to me because I am physical touch. I want to hug. I just want to be close to people, and COVID, 6 feet. And then you couldn't hug anybody. Then you're giving fist bumps. And I'm like, And I have a great family, but I'm single, so I'm like, somebody hug me. I had COVID last December actually, and I remember I was in my house by myself for 2 weeks, and when my mom would drop food off to me, and she'd kind of like back up really far, whenever she'd ring the doorbell, and I'm like, no, like give me a hug, but I didn't really want her to, but it was just sad to have that distance. And I remember finally coming out of quarantine, and the two people that were first people I saw were my brother and sister-in-law, who are not physical touch. And I'm like, they just gave me those like slight little hugs. And I was like, why? Hug me. And so then I just found my sister Tori, because she will definitely hug me. She's physical touch as well. And so I think that it's just interesting to have people where you know that they express love in that way. So even when I'm talking to people, touch often, as they say, touch often indicates acceptance. So it's like this underlying subconscious thing. When you reach out and touch someone's arm, I think people take this physical touch thing way too, like, not that it can't be that, as in physical relationships between man and wife, but when it comes to even like when I speak with people, or when someone is talking to me and they reach out and like kind of touch my hand, or we're across the table and they reach out and touch my arm, or they, what I like to call, break the bubble, it means the world to me. I'm like, oh, they see me, they love me, like they broke the bubble. Or like when I meet people, I tend to do that. I put my hand on their shoulder, or that type of thing, because it's not like trying to make people uncomfortable. And I realize there's definitely boundaries, okay? Like there are boundaries, and I try to keep them as well. But also know that I show love that way, and I know other people don't show love that way. So some people might feel uncomfortable, and so you just adjust to that. But if there's somebody in your life who's like your spouse is like physical touch and that's not yours, I mean, just simply like holding their hand out of nowhere, or even during arguments, I always found that like if I just knew that their hand, like they were touching me, like my hand, or like maybe a hand on my knee, even if we were in disagreement, I felt like it was all going to be okay because it was physical touch. And so that's kind of like, I know our culture has distorted physical touch in many, many ways. So I'm not trying to like fly by that, and people have abused it. But I love it because you think of babies. There's been a lot of babies. A lot of my friends have had babies. My sister just had one and is having one. And anyways, I just think of babies because you can't communicate. Like, it's acts of service for sure, but they have no idea what you're doing. Like, you could talk to them all day long. They don't know what you're saying. Like, you could give them gifts, but they don't really know what it is. But when you're like really, when you're holding them and you're looking at that skin to skin contact, even right after a baby is born, is so critical, because physical touch really does show acceptance. And I think it's a gift that God has given all of us. And I believe that the God that we can't see yet, he actually gives us each other to be able to display physical touch for each other and to be that for each other until we can see him face to face. So that's the beauty of community and being in that with each other. And so I also have like the theory of opposites, which we can go into another time, which is often we withhold love in the way that we receive it. So as somebody who's physical touch, when I was upset with someone, I just wanted to be in the other room. Like, do not touch me. I'm one of those people, which I know God will help me with. Maybe this is why I'm not married, but anyways. And so like those types of things where a lot of times we withhold in the way that we receive it the most. So just be aware of that. Maybe we can dive into it later. But an example of this is the leper who Jesus healed him by touching him. And he went past the fact that he had this disease. And Jesus is like, no, I'm going to reach out and touch him anyway. And he was clean. Or Mary Magdalene in the garden, when she sees Jesus, she goes and she hugs him, which I love. And so it's beautiful how we can express love in all of these 5 different ways. Again, it's words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and giving gifts. And I just actually want to ask Matt Dennis, who is my videographer, if you don't know him. Matt, which ones are yours? Can you hop on?
My top 2 are physical touch and quality time as well.
What was that?
Top 2, physical touch and quality time.
Okay, Jeremy?
I'm a quality time too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hang out. Let's, like you said, let's go see a movie and then let's go to dinner and talk about it. I'm all about that.
Yeah. And that's Jeremy, my producer. I love it. I love that we all have different things. And I think that it's a beautiful picture of who God is, and we get to represent him, because Our God is love, and he loves in many different ways, and we get the opportunity to love other people around us in these types of ways and also receive them in this way. So again, if you want to take this test, 5lovelanguages.com, highly recommend it. It's not everything, but it's just a tool in your toolbox to really live a vibrant life, to have vibrant relationships, to feel love and to know love and know who God is through love. And so I hope that these 2 episodes, again, this is part 2, so if you missed the first one, you can jump in, that these 2 episodes just help give you a tool in your toolbox to where you can just know who God is in a deeper way and love the people around you. And just remember that every day is an invitation to live the vibrant life. Thank you for joining me on the Vibrant Life Show. I would love to connect with you and get to know you. My favorite place to hang out is over on Instagram at ally.gentry or over on Facebook. You can also go to my website, alligentry.com. That's ALIGENTRY.com. Sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date and get links to the show on all platforms after we air, the show's YouTube channel, and really just all the things. I'm so honored to get to hang out with you today. My heart is that you remember that each day is an invitation to live the vibrant life.